Hi, Professor Hibbler, it's your student, Robert Matt Mooneyham. I'm about to give the speech. Here, we talked about it on the phone earlier. Here is the PowerPoint. I'm going to try to do the best I can. I know it's a kind of a rough visual, but we had talked about it earlier, just using it on the computer because I don't have any other means but to do it but through here. So that's what we're working with right now. The topic I chose, I think, is actually a pretty interesting one. Not a lot of information about it right now, but it's a COVID-19 topic. Talks a little bit about, here, let me adjust the camera so the light's not so. These speeches have not, I've given speeches already through the phone, or through YouTube, throughout this pandemic, this global health crisis that we're in, and it has not gotten any easier. I'm used to being a public speaker. I'm pursuing a career in which public speaking is going to be a big part of my job, because I want to be a pastor, but it is very weird just talking to you right here through the phone. So that's where I'm at, but we're going to try to make this work. The topic was the COVID-19's impact on the New York Theater District. Thought it would be interesting because it kind of isolates this big global health crisis into just one little one market, one economic institution in one city. So, like I said, COVID-19's impact on the New York Theater District. So let's see how this goes. We'll try our best to make this work. Okay. Let's go get one more drink of water. Maybe if I backed you up a little bit, I'm sorry. You're right now sitting on a pile of books. There's nobody here to film this. This has got to work somehow. Maybe that will work. Can you see the PowerPoint? I don't like this. We're going to make it work. I might just throw you the computer at some point. Okay, here we go. I want you to take a moment and imagine this. There is a multi-million-dollar New York City business that's been in operation since the year 1988, over 32 years. Not even the devastating impact of September 11th could keep this business closed for more than 2 days. But for the past month and a half, this business has not seen one single customer or one single dollar be put into its annual revenue. What business am I talking about? I am talking about, you can see from the PowerPoint there, that's the wrong slide, Phantom of the Opera. Of course, famous Andrew Lloyd Webber musical that's been running in New York City for over 32 years. This is the longest amount of time since the year 1988 there has not been a performance of Phantom of the Opera happening in New York City. Why is that? I think we all know why. The COVID-19 pandemic. It has closed down restaurants, bars, sports are gone. Millions of Americans are out of work. Many are fearing for the health of their loved ones and for their own health. The economic impact has been incredible. The social impact has been incredible as well. But today what we're going to do is this. We're going to look at the economic, human, and social impact of COVID-19 on just one little area, one space and time, and that is going to be, of course, New York City and the New York City Theater District. So how do we kind of view this problem that's going on in this one little space in our country? Well, we have to view it, as I've said before, almost as a three-headed monster, because this is both an economic problem, a human problem, and a social problem, this closing of the New York Theater District. So we want to start first by looking at this problem from an economic perspective. So what kind of economic impact does having something like Broadway, does having something like a theater district in New York have to the city? And when that rug is pulled out from under the feet of the city, what are the economic consequences of that for the industry and for the people who build their lives around the industry? So let's take a look. Okay, so hope you can see that right there. The theater district, of course, is a primary source of revenue for the city of New York. It's estimated about every year that the city brings in roughly $15 billion into the economy of the city because, of course, tourists come. People from all across the country, all across the globe, come to see a Broadway show, and that happens. They come, they pay for parking, they pay for a restaurant, they shop. So it has a big economic impact to the businesses, of course, around in and around those theaters. And then, of course, it also supplies 96,000 jobs. It's not just the actors. It's the ushers. It's the ticket takers. It's the people working in the box office. It's those people who are working in the restaurants and who are working in the parking garages. It's the people who are selling drinks at the bars. So $15 billion, 96,000 jobs, huge economic enterprise that encompasses New York City. And of course, that information is provided from David London of NPR. So here's the situation that New York City is currently in right now. Andrew Cuomo, of course, originally, when this pandemic took off, canceled performances till about mid-April. That cancellation has now been marked until June 7th, with no real end in sight, because Andrew Cuomo said that June 7th reopening is not a rule of thumb. It's just another delay, and there are likely to be more delays. Just to kind of put into perspective, the first week of the pandemic, the industry suffered $33 million in losses in ticket sales alone. Now, with the timing of this pandemic happening in early March, going through whoever knows how long, mostly going into the summer, that's going to be a big, that's going to have a big economic impact to the city of New York, because that is the primary season, that's the primary selling time for these theaters, for these performances, for these plays and these musicals that are taking place, because people, of course, are going on summer vacation, they're coming in, ticket prices are up, more people are consuming from the city, and that's going to be gone most likely this summer. So they're looking at roughly a $3 to $5 billion loss just from the theater district alone. Let's also look at this, secondly, from a human perspective, because it's more than just about money, right? From the human perspective, it's this. Within the first week of the pandemic, there were 4 New York theater employees who actually contracted coronavirus. One was an usher, he's unnamed. 2 actors, Brian Stokes Mitchell and Aaron Tveit, and then, of course, playwright Terrence McNally. He's known for things like Kiss of the Spider Woman, Masterclass, Ragtime. He wound up succumbing to the virus, unfortunately. I believe it was March 24th. The other 3 wound up recovering just fine. Just to kind of give you a little story to understand the human impact of this, a few hours, about an hour roughly before the matinee performance of Moulin Rouge that was going to take place, I believe it was something like March 12th, the day that this pandemic hit, they had a giant meeting, and of course they canceled the production going forward for the time being. The show had been getting in millions of dollars a week, and now it's just gone. 3 shows have already closed, putting many people out of work, unemployed, and it's most likely that more productions will close because there's no revenue coming in and they're still having to rent out these spaces. Actors Equity had to extend its annual yearly dues. They have dues that are given to, it's basically a union to help protect actors who are unemployed, but because there's so much unemployment right now, they're having to extend yearly dues, so they have really no revenue coming in, and that's the organizations that's supposed to be protecting people when they go unemployed and when there's no revenue coming in for that profession. Right now, they're currently, AEA, the Actors Equity Association, is currently urging Congress to provide health care, because being the revolving door, that's something like being the profession that being an actor is. You know, you're in a job for a little while, and then you're out of a job, back in a job, out of a job, sometimes in a job for a few months or for even a few years, and then out of a job for maybe a few months or a year plus, because it's such a revolving door. They don't really have any sort of definitive health insurance, and with AEA not being able to pick up the slack because of the lack of money coming in for yearly dues, they're urging Congress to expand their health insurance benefits. And of course, let's think of social and cultural. This is really the last one. You see, I have Kyle Field right there, A&M. Think about it like this. This will be a good way to finish it up. Imagine that fall came around. We're still in this pandemic. There's really no end in sight. There's still not enough testing. There's still a great fear about being in public spaces. Imagine fall came around and we couldn't have A&M football in something like the Brazos County. Imagine the social impact of that. Imagine the human impact of that in terms of how we live life, being a college student or a professor on campus. Imagine the devastating economic impact of that. Okay, A&M football, of course, is woven into the social fabric of College Station, of Brazos County, just the way that theater is and live performance is woven into the fabric of New York City. So with that, the social fabric has clearly been significantly damaged by the closing of the theaters, even though it's a much needed measure. And no one is quite sure when these theaters will reopen. This was reported from Greg Evans of Deadline. Greg Evans had an interview with the president of the Broadway League, and they said, we really don't know what to do right now because of the ethics of the situation. We don't think that the June 7th reopening is going to happen. We're thinking it might be anywhere between reopening in maybe September, maybe October, maybe upwards of 2 years, because right now what they're trying to figure out is what's the right way to reopen. Do we want to have audiences wearing masks and only, have 2 seats between them? Is that really a good way to reopen? Can we do that with the actors? Because, of course, the actors are close together on stage, so that's not really possible. How do we keep the theaters clean? How do we make sure that everything is sanitary and safe? Some have even talked about, of course, and this is where the kind of 1 to 2 year estimate comes in, which is a pretty drastic estimate. But if we don't have maybe the best time to reopen would be when we have a definitive vaccine. So I'll kind of finish it up with just this thought. The song goes, they say that the neon lights are bright on Broadway, but for right now, keeping those neon lights turned on, keeping New York up and going, that might be too much of an economic burden to keep those lights on. So there is really no definitive end in sight, as it is for all of the COVID-19 pandemic. And as we see something like New York City have its culture and its economy shocked in this way through the closing of the theater district, what does that mean for places like us, like College Station or Bryan, places all across the country, if this crisis doesn't end soon? All right. I hope you enjoyed the speech. I know it probably was a bit long, but thank you for the time. Bye.